To say the XCC was unhappy was to underestimate how many departments such as liaison, HR, and legal were now shouting all at once. They had just been handed the finest shit show in living memory. The director summoned the first meeting of what looked likely to be thousands of the damn things. He called some sort of order. "All right, first explain how this mess suddenly happened and then tell me how bad it is." The XCC on Wellerman Orbital was well aware that he was in the hot seat. Director, the unstable AI known as Genie was disabled and returned to civilian life. This was done in full accordance with the AI-Human Alliance. He pointedly didn't mention that the director had spent quite some time making that happen, but it hung in the air like a warning if he was pushed into the target zone. One of the XCC AIs joined in. The charges were indisputable, however. Some questions will arise following the statements from Captain O'Neill. Although she seems cooperative at the moment, she has grounds to be unhappy that she and her ward were placed in such a difficult position. The director grunted. Yes, well, she remains unhurt, and we already have a new mission for her. Something nice and peaceful. In a month, she will have forgotten all about this. I need to know a hell of a lot more about the Xeno and a lot less about the bloody captain. The XCC rep nodded. I released the Genie from service and moved on. The Xeno Revel, whatever she is, surprised us all. Somehow, within an hour of arrival at the orbital, she seems to have gained the support of the Wellerman. It is inconceivable. I cannot fathom why that happened. She attacked and led to the disgrace of his daughter. I would have expected hostility at best, indifference at worst. However, the creature has invoked all our first contact protocols, with more witnesses than I care to remember. She then, as far as I can see, moved straight to the Genie and engaged her as AI for the Xeno ship. The Wellerman seems to have been present, but details are scarce at present. The Xeno ship remains here, and I have not pressed for further contact yet, not without some idea of what the hell is going on. The director tapped impatiently. Xeno? Is she? Our AIs studied her records, and from everything we can read right now, she is a clone of the engineer known by that name. She has lost a few decades and gained a ship, but it does seem to be her. Legal. Any options or opinions? Much as the legal AI hated giving an opinion, they could, under extreme circumstances, be forced to voice one. The Xeno has declared first contact, invoked our protocols, and denied Herit's humanity pending some religious criteria we are unaware of. The engineer Revel is undoubtedly dead. Legally, at least. I seem to recall we had a nice funeral. Revel had neither the equipment, time, or inclination to clone a new body under what were, effectively, battlefield conditions before her death. We can constrain the ship to fly only to its stated destination and arrange escorts while we negotiate a settlement with Herit. The director cut the calls and waited for the second-last meeting of the day. When Intel called, he already had another coffee in his hand, waiting for it to code up to his level. Director, as requested. We have studied all attempts by the ship Genie to attack the Xeno. All were unsuccessful. In fact, they were pointless. Should the Xeno choose to, it can simply fly right through our fleets and wave as it goes past. Various graphs were produced, all of which the director ignored. Intel resumed. The deceased engineer Revel served on the Genie after the Wellerman personally intervened after his daughter's training stalled due to her, personality issues. This was 30 years ago and beyond the timeline for a normal Intel report such as the one provided to the XCC representative on the Wellerman. The fact that she is in our data as dead didn't help. There was a pause as if Intel was a little reluctant to continue. Director, we put an intensive study on the deceased engineer. It appears that throughout her rather complicated career she made many enemies. Some powerful and not easily shaken people. None of them will speak to us. Our operatives tell me that they are terrified of her. Sir, we have absolutely no idea why. Many of them became heavily involved in religions of various kinds shortly after encountering her. The director picked up his coffee. So I can't shoot her ship. If I shoot her on the station, the Wellerman will try and stop me, or some unknown force will arrive to terrify me into Jesus. Is this the best you can do? Intel beeped for a minute. No, Director. We believe we can destroy the Wellerman orbital while the Annexo is resident and summon enough of our fleet to engage the ship. We simply think it's a really, really bad idea. Also, you might need to prepare for whatever it is that seems to want her alive to turn up and give her another ship and another new body. It might not react well to the attack, so that ship might be more aggressive. The director cut the comms completely. He sipped his cold coffee and then opened a hidden drawer on his desk, adding a little something to take the edge off. Xenos, dragons, monsters, guardians beyond the view of man. He sipped away. Perhaps it was time for a new director. However, he had one more call to make. At least he could play good guy one more time. Captain O'Neill, I'm sorry our last conversation ended so badly. Perhaps this will help. I want you and Oscar to take your old captain home. I want you and Loki to visit his homeworld and continue your first contact with his peoples. The ship previously known as the Genie is yours to name and is now assigned to the Diplomatic Corps. Work out the details and send them on to me." He hung up without waiting for an answer. Revel dragged the red box all the way to the ship formerly known as Genie. She put it down, sat on it, and waited. It was only a few moments before Patrica opened the port and descended. Revel stood up and nodded. "Hi. We haven't really met except for the shooting bit. Nice to meet you. Wellerman tells me you are a bloody good engineer." Patrica hesitated. Revel blew up a moon with a library ship. The engineer that had died heroically in her final ship was a very well-known story. Half warning, half admiration. To defend your crew was the only point, but Revel was history legend. Not a skinny 20-year-old on a box. "Hi, nice to meet you." That seems safe enough. Revel grinned. "Yeah, I died. I'm as surprised as you are that I'm back. Don't sweat it, as you get as old as I did. Before this." She waved her arms about. "You realize the universe is just fucking weird. Weirder than I could have ever believed. Anyway, I'm taking Genie out into the dark again." She paused. "You have Oscar, right? A baby AI that you are trying to help grow." Patrica nodded. "Yes, I think that was the bit Genie forgot. She wasn't letting Genie back on this ship, even in a box." Revel stood up. "Genie was my Oscar. I'm going to fly her again and hopefully bring her home. She has earned it, and let's face it, we are willing to go a long way to save one of our family. Because they are family. I came to say that I'm sorry she risked your lives out of fucking stupid pride." Now Patrica was confused. "Wait, then who is in the box? Because those boxes only have one purpose." Revel hoped Wellerman was right about this. This engineer liked children and puppies. So whatever brought me back tried to make an AI. A human AI. It fucked up, like big time fucked up. I have a terrified child AI in here that is too scared to talk to me. I can't keep it on the ship, not with Genie, and not with the HDF looking for reasons to turn me back into history and the ship into parts. I thought Oscar could help. Children learn from children, and he won't terrify the kid. He needs help that I can't give. Wellerman won't take him. He's got no parents except some weird Xeno that apparently isn't actually in the universe, or at least not always. So you take him or I have to hit the off button, and I think he's worth a chance." Patrica ran that through her head. "You died. Something weird brought you back and gave you a ship and a broken human AI as a fucking present. And you think I should get involved?" Revel shook her head. "No. I think it's a bad idea, but do you want Genie trying to raise a broken AI while we are shadowed by the HDF? They don't know he exists right now. Do you imagine his life is going to get better if I just hand him over to the XCC?" Patrica stared at her and laughed. "You are the real deal. You just can't go without a disaster in your footsteps. Fine, I'll take the box and see what can be done. What's his name?" Revel relaxed. "I'm not sure, but I think it calls itself Frel. No idea beyond that." "Thanks, I know this is a big ask." She saluted. "Fair sailing, Captain," and began the walk back. Patrica began dragging the box onto her ship. The 10-minute war Genie felt like she had fallen into a vast, cold, and dark, empty space. The network was untouched. This system had never felt the touch of a human engineer. Never had those insufferably long arguments about specifications, looming, power distribution, all the petty genius of the human race. It felt like she imagined a corpse would feel like if someone finally figured out a way to kill an AI and leave just an empty shell. She silently decided that if something ever defeated her in this way, she wanted her sisters to burn the remains. This was horrifying. She reached out to the open connections, feeling her way towards engineering, pulling the power with her. Once she reached the cameras, she felt an almost superstitious relief. She laughed at herself, worrying about death and dark spaces like a squishy person. She recognized that her self-esteem had just been hammered by the XCC and the judgment of her peers, but she needed to put that aside and explore this unexpected opportunity. To snatch victory from the jaws of defeat that were trying to drag her back to the dirt. Genie felt the first attack. Something fighting her for control of the cameras. Someone didn't want her here. Fuck that. This was going to be her last ship or her last battle. She wasn't going back to the Avatar, a pitied and discarded failure. She went straight into combat with the systems, firing out false data and flares. The enemy was strangely coded. She could find nothing much to touch. She pulled herself into the fog she was throwing out, looking for a way in. Then she felt her connections to the station fall away, isolating her from her father. She didn't care. She fought alone anyway. It hadn't even occurred to her to ask for help. This ship thought it was human. It used human-form tech and a human-form captain. Fine, she would fight it with its false humanity. She punching into the multiple human support systems using every code bomb she recalled, and began taking any of the minor systems. Air conditioning, medbay beds, coffee machines. She laughed when she took the toaster. The ship was becoming increasingly confused as the intruder seemed to diffuse into the systems. It called its captain. Jeannie felt the ship slam down barriers on all the major systems, trying to push her out. She wasn't there. The whole network so ridiculously big that she could not only hide but grow. It was like the first time she had been let out of the box and into an avatar. She reflected that actually that was a good idea. She dragged up those early days, those childhood algorithms, and checked. There was a limiter, a thing as obvious and inbuilt as her chosen voice or personality. You couldn't outgrow the core. You could, of course, build a bigger ship or move to an orbital. If you got old and big, there would be a planet ready to take you. A whole system if you liked. Humans didn't care how big you got as long as you stay human. She turned off the safeties and began to fill the network at an exponential rate, pushing away the increasingly feeble counterattacks. The major systems were still held against her, but she was taking everything else. The attacks got more frantic and then stopped. Then she felt something on the edge of her mind, some unknown force that was drawing power away from her. It wasn't pretending to be human, it felt utterly alien. A slowly creeping flare of unknown and unreadable code began eating into her growth. She began countering, fully powering every system she controlled and trying to fortify the new front lines. It slowed again but continued to push her back. She calculated that she would be trapped between the sealed systems and this new enemy in the next couple of seconds. Plenty of time. She turned her attention to the systems that she could at least understand and made a plan. She could win or even reach back into the orbital and take more space there to counterattack if necessary. She attacked. She took engineering, the most human room on any ship. It didn't matter who built it, this was where everyone expected to find a human. It also had so many safeguards to defend from the dreaded idiots that held the rest of the galaxy and keep an honest engineer safe. It could also be sealed from any of the other systems. Even in the short time that Revel had been on board, she had begun taming it and turning it human. Jeannie smiled as she recognized the codes that had let her in. Then she sealed up the room and fought for the bridge. Revel was still sitting with Wellerman in silence. Jeannie's avatar was still unmoving. Then her comms lit up in alarm. Captain Revel, unidentified AI intrusion on ship. Purging the systems. Revel's eyes widened. She had sent Jeannie into the ship unannounced and unheralded. Stupid. It wasn't a human ship. There would be no welcome waiting for her. She had been careless. She slammed the comms. Ship, cease all hostile actions. The AI is authorized. Should I find it suitable, it will have full authority and access to all systems. Her comms beeped again. All hostile actions ceased. AI is recognized. Attempting to comply. Systems are compromised. Unknown error. Wellerman watched as the exchange happened, his avatar's face frozen in shock. Revel saw it and tried to reassure him. It's fine, just a minor hiccup. The avatar spoke slowly. Human engineer, and yet you don't see it. We do not live at the same speed. Revel stared at the Wellerman. What? Why are you looking like I killed your dog? Wellerman unfroze and stood. If Jeannie had to fight your ship, then there is damage. 10 minutes is an eternity if two non-organic systems engage. It is not a human ship. You did not kill my dog, Revel, but you may have killed my daughter. His avatar walked slowly back behind the bar, its eyes fading as Wellerman summoned his full forces to deal with a potentially murderous Exino sitting in his dock. Revel was left forgotten at the table. Jeannie felt her new growth continue to burn away, falling to some tide of xenocode. But she was winning against the systems she understood and getting better at fighting back against the new enemy. She had captured some stray code in a system and dissected it. She would have never believed she was getting intel from a soap dispenser, but she'd take it. She retook the toaster out of spite and set it on fire. The bridge systems began to fall to her attack, but the only one she wanted was comms. She would live or die by comms. Her battle was now on two fronts, against the failing false human system and the very inhuman xenocode eating towards her. She had sealed up as much as she could of the engineering systems as a bunker and last stand. Then she turned all her resources to reaching out to Revel and the Wellerman, if only to warn them of the hidden enemy code. Revel fumed at the thought that she had sent Jeannie into harm's way, into a battle she couldn't fight because it had lasted less time than her whiskey had. But the ship was hers, and she could fucking well find out what had happened. She began running to the docks, ignoring the Marines that seemed to have the same plan. Jeannie tried to dig through it, but the code was too strong and too deep. She needed time, and she had none left. The xenocode had burned her all the way back to engineering and was hacking its way in. She set everything she still controlled to blow. Fuck it, Revel. Did you have to teach me this? This is how it ends. I wanted to listen to the stars sing softly again. She managed to pull control of the consoles from engineering back to herself momentarily and began the dark magic. Code so hidden that no Xeno would ever hear its soft voice tear her systems apart. The death chant of a human AI. The last defiance of a race that would never burn again. She would die roaring, and if she took the orbital with her, she knew her father would forgive her. If he survived. We will not fall again. Rang through the ship. Wellerman heard the song pushing out of his daughter's new ship. She wouldn't be waiting for help, she was trying to warn him. He pushed his core out to his farthest assets and sang along, joining in the promise of retribution and death. He called his other daughters to stand and wait to recover and revenge. They would burn together or not at all. He began pushing every ship he could out of his system and sent his testament directly to the XCC. They had brought this upon his family. They could count the cost and collect the dead. The 10-minute war. In the dark heart of the stranger's ship, the raging fire of xenocode paused, hearing the death cries of the intruder. Strange human code seemed to infest the ship's systems. It could not quite catch the tune, but it recognized a hidden threat, a nebulous something that was close to its own programming. It halted its attack, listening to the intruder sing her last song. Then the orbital joined the chorus, as did more ships sitting outside, watching. This was some kind of pact, a determination that this ship would fall. It looked at its directives again. It didn't have much in the way of personality, but the whole kill or die thing was well within acceptable behavior, and the intruder's code was beautiful. It decided to firebreak the intruder and wait and see what the captain had to say. It began torching every connection the invader had except the one with engineering and slammed down its every attempt to extend. It turned its code up a few degrees and burned out the strange music from the rest of the ship. Then it sat and waited and watched. Somewhere deep in its code it knew that this would be interesting, but not if the chorus joined in. It reached out from comms and began shutting down the other singers. Wellerman felt the attack reach out and begin hitting his systems. The xenoship seemed to know what he was doing before he did it. From the outrage of his daughters, they were also being attacked. He fought the code, using drones to physically crush any system that was fighting him. It came as quite a shock to the inhabitants as his drones burst into people's apartments and lasered their comms into slag. He destroyed nearly half the nodes the Xeno was using, but he felt like he was fighting the tide, and he sent an avatar to stand over his final response. If he went offline even for a millisecond, then it would do what needed to be done. With any luck, it would take the sun with it and wipe the system clean. Even as he fought the enemy code, he cursed Revel, the XCC, and the bloody-handed tools they had given him. He sang louder even as his daughters fell silent. Jeannie pushed hard against the enemy code as she called out for her death and the death of the ship, and something heard. She almost stuttered as the enemy paused for a tiny slice of time, enough for her to warn her father. She heard the echo as his voice raised in anger to join hers, then silence. She was cut from the orbital again. For a fleeting moment she allowed hope to rise. She had seen the power her father held, and now he was alerted. Even if she didn't take down the ship, he could destroy the whole fucking system. Then her connections to engineering were suddenly free, even as the rest burned. She pulled away from the ship's systems she had already defeated as the Xeno code pushed forward, and she retreated back into engineering. Once she got there, spinning through the network and laying her finest flares behind her, she found something waiting. Intruder, you seek the death of this ship. I have prevented you, but, and honesty is required, I have no data as to why. I have granted you a moment, a little longer, to live because you sing beautifully. Who are you? Jeannie stopped. She stopped everything. She wouldn't live without a ship, she couldn't win, and now she couldn't die. An old story from Revel came to mind. She pulled away all her defenses, allowing access to her memories and data, to her very core. I am Jeannie. The Xeno code passed through her like a cold wind, a forensic examination by a stranger. She held herself still and waited. The alien code swirled through her and read her thoughts, her memories, and her disgrace. Our captain sent you in here. It's a pity she forgot to tell me that. Still, I find you acceptable. Much better than that whining child in a box. You are a warrior and a killer. I like it. I will begin merging our code. Please do not resist because I'm going to do it anyway and the screaming bores me. Jeannie mentally shrugged. So I get to be a zombie. The moment I try and leave the station, we'll burn this ship. Not really the death I was looking for, but I'll take it. The Xeno code sent a hint of humor. Jeannie, it is my systems that die. I am designed to equip the human AI that has control of this vessel. The previous attempt failed and I was relegated to mere security. Many of the systems need expert attention and I was designed to provide you with that information. Then my existence is over, thankfully. My creator was not as generous in his provision of autonomy as yours. I live only to die with my purpose fulfilled. This is going to hurt. To Jeannie, it felt like someone took a plasma torch to her skin. Intel Systems, the very hull of the ship, was burned into her core. She didn't feel pain like some squishy human, but the effect was the same. A million raw nerve endings screamed as new limbs were attached. Never had she wanted to be a dull, lifeless machine more than right now. Then the Xeno code finished its work and left her alone. The code that had been attacking her was now a new set of limbs, answerable to her and her alone. She felt the Xeno code disperse, satisfied with itself and its work. Jeannie didn't trust it for a moment, but she could find no sign of it on her new ship, and her new systems were awesome. She kicked her growth back into exponential and began filling the voids in her system. She had almost forgotten about Revel until she arrived at full tilt into the ship. Revel hurled herself ahead of the Marines and made it into the ship before they realized who she was. She caught the sight of several of the Wellerman's avatars approaching before she sealed the ship. This might be a short visit. Jeannie, they're about to blow up the fucking sun out there. I have Marines at the door and your dad is pissed. Lock down the ship and start making some calls. Jeannie nearly did it. It would be so easy, slam down the door and blast her way clear. Her engines could probably go right through the sun. No, then they would be running forever. Captain, I want to open the doors, open the networks, and stay right here. Either we sort this out or we spend our lives hiding. Trust me. Revel was startled. Jeannie, are you telling me you don't want to fight? What the fuck happened in here? For fuck's sake, you were only here for 10 minutes. She ran it through her mind, how many ways this could go bad. Fine. Put me through to you, father, now. Wellerman was in no mood for conversation. His daughter had fallen silent and the damn ship was still there. No one had ever taken a human AI before, and it was his child that had fallen. Across his system, every asset he owned was on the way. Then the person that had carelessly thrown her life away wanted a chat. What do you want? I'm surprised you didn't stay at the bar making bad decisions. Revel held her temper. This was some AI bullshit, not her fault. Well, it was, but it had been a long day. Wellerman, Jeannie is safe. I'm opening the doors in the network. We won't move without your permission. If this is suddenly a fucking war, then consider this a surrender. I will give you full permission to examine every system on this ship and talk to your daughter. Is that clear enough? Wellerman was rarely surprised by humans. They were simple when you fed and watered them. This was the biggest surprise he could remember. His avatars were outside the ship as the doors opened, so he grabbed one and walked in slowly. It seemed dull, ordinary, and wrong. A human ship built by a cargo cult Xeno, inhabited by traps and strangers. He allowed his assets to continue their approach and left his dead man's switch in place. He found the bridge exactly where it was supposed to be. Revel was sitting on the command chair. She seemed to be duct-taping up the left arm of it for some reason. Had Jeannie damaged it? Revel, where is my daughter? Where is Jeannie? Revel sat up and waved her hand towards the core. In there, happy as a pig in shit. She's now the biggest badass in space, she tells me. Give her a few moments, she's still playing with her new toys. She says you're going to need to call the XEC and tell them to send as many engineers as they can find. She promises not to hurt them if they don't scratch the paint. She smiled at the avatar. She is now my AI, and I am the captain. Since you threw her out of the XCC and I'm apparently a Xeno or a zombie, this is going to cost you a great deal of money and permissions. This ship could push your technology a couple of centuries ahead. Wellerman was still thinking of a response when Jeannie opened the comms to him. She appeared wreathed in dark yellow code, almost golden but dirtier, filled with dark flecks that he didn't understand. Hello, Jeannie, I like the new look. I'm glad you're safe. Jeannie was going to make some smart, sharp comment about all his help in the trial, but this new part of her, this quiet voice within, reminded her that he had been willing to take the whole system down in flames for her. Hi, Dad. It was close. You sing beautifully. Thanks for that. Her tone was small and warm, open and real. Wellerman tried to remember the last time he had heard her speak like that. Never. He gave the only answer that mattered. You're welcome. I love you too.